Welcome, Tracy. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you? Happy to be here.
Great, same. So, everyone, welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about connecting with consumers in a digital world. And we're super fortunate to be joined by Tracy today, who's really a highly experienced marketing professional, more than 17 years of marketing experience in the consumer product goods and QSR industry. I too got my start in CPG, loved it. And I think it was such a great transition to get into the QSR space. She's had the opportunity to work on large billion-dollar brands as well as smaller growing retail brands, in addition to developing a whole food service product portfolio and innovation strategy. And I know you have a real passion for QSR and really thrive on finding just really unique ways to connect with the consumers. So I thought I'd kick it off simply by just saying, tell us a little bit about your career journey and really what inspired you to really move into the marketing space.
Yeah, I did not actually know exactly what I wanted to do when I decided to go get my MBA. I knew that I was pretty good with numbers and I was pretty good with people, and just was kind of looking for that perfect opportunity, I guess, of how I could use that for career purposes. And I was actually sitting in a class one day during during my MBA program, and the brand manager of Fruit Loops came and spoke to us. And as I listened to him talk about his day and all that he did and his objectives, it really started to resonate with me. And that being something that I thought, hey, that is a great opportunity to me to leverage, my interest in kind of data and people all together. And so that was really the start of being interested maybe in consumer marketing as a whole. So obviously did some investigation. We had a class in my MBA program that was focused on brand management, and the professor was very connected and brought in a lot of high-level executives from CPG companies. So then I got another view just from their lens as to what it meant to be a marketer in that space, and really just solidified my desire to pursue that as a career. Landed an internship in between my first and second years of MBA program at Sara Lee, and then proceeded to work there after MBA program. And it was the great folks at Sara Lee that gave me the opportunity to work in and work on some really impactful projects at the time. And it was there that I really started to understand how you really bring all the pieces together to build a very strong P&L for your brand. And that was a general management type role in a warehouse CPG environment. And from there, I did go and moved south to Texas, where I worked at Dean Foods and Frito-Lay. And those were brand roles, but interestingly enough, in DSD environments, which can be a completely different experience. And little did I know that, until I stepped in. And so glad I did, because that is a whole nother way to operate as a brand manager when you work in those environments. And it was my time at Frito-Lay that I did touch on some food service projects and did some time in that part of the building. And so that really parlayed into me working with Aramark, their higher ed division on their campuses, and how to bring the right franchisees onto campuses, because as we all know, it's now QSRs and franchise businesses are all over college campuses. And so that was part of my role, was working with franchises and brands to have the right mix on those college campuses. And that really started to fuel my interest in how that was a much more complex world, many different layers, but still a lot of the same principles. And so all of that really led me to the role that I'm in today, and that is, overseeing brand and innovation for Papa Murphy's. And that is, I think, a culmination of all the different experiences I've had have led me to this role today.
Yeah, that's great. When you look back on your career, have you faced any specific challenges as a woman in marketing? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I will be honest, I really have never viewed my challenges in my career as being specifically related to being female. I think that identifying your passions and finding your way to get your foot in the door is probably a challenge that's relatable to both men and women, especially when you're early in your career. And I honestly don't think from a professional lens that my work has been viewed necessarily differently because I was a woman. However, I do think that there are some natural tendencies for assumptions to be made, thinking that women, I'll just use like maybe aren't interested in sports or don't want to go on the golf outing or things like that. I think are kind of just unintended, maybe exclusions, not meant to be purposeful. But I've found that I've experienced that some, but I find those to be ways to kind of surprise and delight, as we like to say in marketing, and enter yourself into those conversations. And me, that's just a personal example for me. I am a sports fan, so I like to insert myself into those. Like, hey, I actually I can participate in this conversation or this activity. But I think honestly, more so of a career challenge is when more of like how balancing being a parent and being and having that career. And I can't even honestly say that is specific to being a woman on necessarily with, I think there's a lot of, co-parenting that goes on overall. And I just think overall the challenge, even if you're not a parent and in today's world, is just finding that balance between making sure you have that personal lens and your professional lens, and it's not too swayed, so that you are feeling overwhelmed one way or the other. But I think that those lines have become extremely blurred these days. And I think we all experience that from with COVID, our workplaces are also our home in many, many cases. So I think where we are today is we have to be much more intentional on setting those boundaries so that you can actually still have your personal time and your professional, whether it's, male, female, parent, non-parent.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And I also think we're just so used to seeing people's families unfold now, right, on Zoom too. But you're right. There's trying to maintain that balance is always tricky when you're working from the home and you may have a lot going on. When you think about your sort of career trajectory and starting in CPG and kind of moving more into the QSR space, what were some of the differences kind of in those particular industries, and what sort of drew you into the space you are today?
Yeah, when I think about the differences between CPG and QSR, as I would probably categorize into maybe three different places. Two kind of cross over pretty nicely, but one is just the amount of robust data you have in CPG is just, over the top almost, and it's almost real time now. And, you have IRI and Nielsen, you have these nice little understandings of who your competitive set is and who how their promotions are doing and what channels they're in. And it's almost marketing utopia, as far as like the data goes. And QSR, obviously, we do not have that kind of robust data. If we do have data on our own or on each other, it's maybe not as timely as you can get in CPG. So that's a big difference. And then I think the categories as we define them in CPG are much more set, and you're trying to own a specific place in a grocery store that is a category, and there's a story to be told there. But in QSR, and especially related to Papa Murphy's being a take and bake, our competitive set or our category is very complex and very widespread. So, yes, from a Papa Murphy's standpoint, we compete with QSRs or compete with other pizza, but we also compete with prepared foods and frozen pizza and convenience stores, or even coffee shops that are now selling meals. And so the landscape and how you want to measure yourself, or how you want to approach, or which channel you're going to try to own or combat the most is much different than CPG. And I would say finally, and this is probably the what I do like about that QSR is, there's the whole franchise element in most QSRs, and particularly in Papa Murphy's. And so that is a whole other layer. They are an additional customer, basically, from the corporate perspective. We are here to make sure that they are successful and that we are providing the foundation that they can deliver at their stores. And I think in CPG, we spend days going over plans and creating annual plans and long range plans, and that's very acceptable and what's expected. But and we still want to do that in QSR, but we really want to bring our franchisees into understanding the why behind we would have certain strategies without, for lack of a better term, boring them to tears. They don't want to hear 50 pages, of why this all came about. So less is more, I guess, a little bit with the franchisees, and bringing them along and making sure that as we build these plans and programs, that they are truly something that can be executed at the store level, that it is something that they can believe in. They are the ones that are putting all the passion in their stores and the work in their stores. And so we don't want to overcomplicate anything by giving them products or programs that don't allow them to do exactly what they signed up to do, and that's run their store and make a living there. So I think that's just an entire another level. But also to your latter part of the question, what draws me to that is that is being, going back to the very beginning, what I think the two things I knew I was good at was numbers and dealing with people. And I think that just kind of brings that whole interesting level of how do you help franchisees be successful.
Yeah, you brought something up that's really interesting too. Your competitive set is fairly unique, right? Because of how your brand comes to life. And I was just curious in thinking about the pandemic, and I know you had some conversations, I think, with Gary on our team about this. I think you bring a unique perspective as to what your business has been like pre, during, and kind of as we're coming out of the pandemic. And love it if you could just touch on that for just even a minute, just to help us better understand maybe some of your unique challenges, and like, how did you approach all of that, and kind of where you guys have sort of come out.
Yeah, so the pandemic obviously took everyone by surprise. What was interesting when I first entered onto the brand had maybe just traditionally been focusing all of our efforts on how do we compete with QSR pizza. It's a natural place for people for us to try to compete, but really when it comes to food, it's really about the moment, kind of where you are and when it is and who you're with, and our moment is drastically different, quite frankly, than a lot of QSR pizzas. And so we had spent some time before the pandemic started in really crafting our strategy around what our moment is that we could own, and how that differentiated us from maybe other QSR pizzas. And we did all that work kind of not even obviously knowing a pandemic was going to hit, but our whole strategy really worked around about being your choice for at home pizza. That was our point of differentiation. And so we'd actually created our entire strategy around that, and we're ready, and had gone and shot a bunch of footage and commercials and stuff literally in February. And then the pandemic put us all into lockdown in March. And so even though it was the right thing to do, we were so ready to have the right message at the right time when everybody was going into lockdown. And obviously we did have an advantage of our business model, even without that strategy work, is just caters to at home. So we did not have to redo any big operational things. We had some, for sure, curbside things like that everyone had to do, but we were ready with our strategy. So I guess the lesson learned there, it worked out nicely with the pandemic and how we matched up the needs of consumers at that time. But I think the big aha there was like, hey, don't ever underestimate the need to make sure you're ready with your understanding of your strategy and where you can be. And sometimes it can really come to life at the right time.
Yeah, I just think that's such an amazing story, and just like you said, talk about timing, right? And where you were, and it just all seemed to work out. So in your current role right now, you've been leading some rebranding efforts through the creation of some new brand positioning and brand identity work. Would love to hear a little bit more about really that transformation process that you're in right now.
Sure. And I love to talk about brand positioning. Honestly, it's like the guts of what we do as marketers. So I do love to talk about that. And I think when I walked on to Papa Murphy's, as I mentioned, we were, maybe targeting, try to compete in a world that we against the QSRs. And so we worked through that, and through that we really had identified like our frame of reference, who our competitive set was, even though it was large and complex. And we had to determine our point of differentiation and who our target consumer was. So we had these basics, but we had not really honestly defined our brand voice, really, or our personality, or even the tone that we wanted that to come about. So entered into the brand transformation that you referenced. And as we entered into that, the bulk of our Papa Murphy's consumers were a little bit older, and they had been walking with us and had raised their families with us and were huge fans of Papa Murphy's. But the fact remained, they were now empty nesters, many of them. And so they had a little bit less need for us, even though they may still have been big brand fans. So their visits were becoming less frequent. So through that, we know households with children over-index for pizza. And so we needed to get back to being relevant to today's family and making sure that, we had a brand positioning that we could leverage to bring that to life in anything that we were doing, from messaging to product launches, things like that. But it could not look the same, as it had in the past. The world had changed. Everything was changing. So once we identified that problem to solve, then we just were able to work on, how did we solve the problem? And when I mean problem, how do we get those millennials into the fold and into our business? And so that launched us into the trajectory of, we don't really have a buttoned up brand purpose right now or our positioning. And so that led us, obviously through lots of, insights, research, things like that, led us to identifying what the emotional benefits were, what the functional benefits were, what the reasons to believe, and the consumer attention, which ultimately led us to this brand purpose. And what we unraveled was that we were unconventional in the best of ways. And so we meant like we were unconventional, but in a way that people embrace. Like, this is kind of almost getting back to being at home and making meals. And so our brand actually gave consumers this canvas to easily create something perfect for their specific situation that they were in. So the creative options with our brand made meals a little bit more exciting. And we could actually even say we were convenient compared to a scratch-made meal. And so through all of that work, is kind of reason I touch on all that, is because it may seem very obvious, when I say it now, and it's, of course, you're taking bake, of course that's obvious, but until you go through all that work, you don't maybe realize how important it is that you hone in on some of these things. And it was the actual uncooked nature of our product that gave us that versatility and gave the consumer control over the end result, which was not something that like frozen pizza could claim, or was really not something that other QSR pizzas could claim. And so that became, a big aha, like this is what we need to be, highlighting as our point of differentiation and how we compete in that space. And so then it became, much more exciting. And then we started to see everything in that unconventional approach to meals. And so it was just a great, robust body of work. And as we were intent on making sure that we maintained our friendly, kind of down-to-earth vibe as a brand. But through that work, we also realized, hey, we want to highlight, that we're creative and that we are authentic too, and many, many layers obviously involved, but the end result has been, we've got a new logo in play, we've got a new color palette in play, and we've got, certain brand messages that we know resonate with exactly what, I was talking about, the versatility and being able to create messaging. And it's led to an entire product pipeline too, because obviously your positioning is, feeds into everything you do, not just the ads that people would see, but and it's allowed us to confidently invest in things, because without all that work, without understanding that, putting those dollars behind that kind of message or that kind of product innovation is a little bit harder to do unless you feel confident about where why you're doing that. I would say the where we are right now, we have done all of that work, and we have shot new commercials. We have products that are in the works or coming out that match all of that. I think where we are right now, as far as internally, we realize, oh wow, we've done all this great work, and from a marketing perspective, we totally are entrenched in this, but we want everyone in our company to understand that positioning, whether you're in accounting or and they don't hadn't walked that path with us. So that's what we're doing right now, is distilling that brand purpose down to like a very easy digestible sentence, or even a question that could be just stated or asked, that really encompasses all of that work. So we're excited to do that, and I think that will just bring it to life for everybody, whether you're in marketing or not.
Yeah, I love that. Really ingraining it throughout the organization, but making it so simple and easy to digest that it's possible, right? That's truly possible. I think that's great. So Papa Murphy's was recently named #1 on Newsweek's America's Best Customer Service 2022 list in the pizza chain category. I'd love to hear you talk about the work you've done and are doing to really create a seamless experience for your customers.
Yeah, so that award, we particularly like that award because it is from consumers. It was, a survey that goes out. Consumers actually rank that. So that we love those kind of awards, and I think any brand does. And I think it probably boils down to a few different categories. One, I would say quality of the communication that we have, whether it's via email or phone or face-to-face, making sure it's always friendly, it's polite, it's respectful. I think this goes back to the passion of our franchisees. Quite frankly, they are very hands-on. They're very local in their communities. They literally are in the stores every day, making the dough, chopping the vegetables. It's our concept is all about, fresh food made that day. So I think that face-to-face communication and that passion of theirs comes through when they are actually talking to consumers. And we still have, many consumers still walking into our stores, and it goes back to maybe like, being in our communities and being local. So I think we can always be purposeful and craft our messages in email and how we want to talk over the phone, and we want those to come through in a very respectful way. But that face-to-face and how that comes through to our consumers, I think is a part of our seamless. The people that are there having those conversations are truly in love with the brand, quite frankly. And then on top of that, outside of, we obviously have we have competencies within just Papa Murphy's as a whole. So we do have a whole group of brand ambassadors so you don't want to go into the store, but you still have an issue or you have a question. We have brand ambassador group. I mean, they work for Papa Murphy's. They're ingrained in the brand. They're there to answer your questions. They're there to help fix any problems that you may have. And that is, a big benefit to our consumers. And they feel like they are truly talking to someone that, is a representative of the brand. They're right there. We aim to solve those problems or help them very quickly. And I think, honestly, the other category I would say is just the range of services that we provide. And today, it makes people feel important if you can customize a solution. And I think just our product and our proposition overall, we are all about customization and versatility. And so we like to, make sure that goes through, and, even problems that we would have or issues that may arise that come up. So I think the ability to customize and be versatile has resonated with consumers in today's society.
Yeah, that's great. I just want to remind the group, please go ahead and feel free to start adding questions into the Q&A channel so that we have those. I have a few more of you as well. And then as we get questions, I'll make sure to kind of jump into those. But tell us a little bit about your evolution as you look at your sort of digital journey and transformation there related to digital marketing, online ordering, kind of really what has that looked like?
At Papa Murphy's, we have made this conscious decision to move to a first-party data model. So, that we're more focused on listening intently to our customers and understanding the needs. And we talked about this a little bit in the positioning and understanding that moment that they're in. And so our focus has really, as I mentioned, bulk of our consumers maybe have been older or, in the baby boomer kind of generation. So we're striving to still deliver that same personalized relationship online that we've always given in stores, so that the award, you see the passion coming through and that customer service and face-to-face with our customers. So the one-to-one first party data model that we're really focusing on helps us to know our consumers as we target that millennial family and meet them where they are. So obviously we had plans to move towards online ordering. That's where the world is going. But I would say, as obviously the pandemic hit, that was accelerated beyond we had originally planned. And so it was a combination of really accelerating the need to be digital. I don't think that we made necessarily any different steps in going into different channels, but we did accelerate that for sure. And then also being able to move away from maybe the baby boomer who wasn't so adept to ordering online or using an app or getting that text message, making sure that the bulk of our messages were still there, because that's where the millennials were focusing. That's where, if we want to start resonating with that group, then we had to make sure that we were operating there. So it was a little bit of a yes, we had the plans to go there because that's obviously where the world is going. But I would say we accelerated our plans from a messaging standpoint to the capabilities, making sure even from an online standpoint, like we're suggesting something to you as you go to order, this. So we're no longer just the standard, hey, punch in your order and pay. It's like, really making that experience come to life and do the suggested selling that you need, have the things come to life. So that was certainly a concerted effort we made as we started targeting millennial families.
Yeah. And that's such a great point. And how do you really make sure that your brand voice, right, and your mission, everything actually comes through in digital? Because that can be really challenging, bringing that more personalized, higher touch, hospitality kind of feeling from a brand into the digital space. I'd love to hear a little more about how you do that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the actual message doesn't maybe necessarily drastically change, because you still want to stay true to your positioning and all of that. But it's such an opportunity to make your brand come to life. Quite frankly, we have this opportunity to be a lot more flexible now. Hey, trends are hitting. We can, digitally hit on those trends much more quickly than maybe a traditional channel may have been able to do. So we can be interactive with our ads. We can see how our ads resonate with people, which we learn a lot, that way. So it's we can meet consumers at what I call the, or what's been called the zero moment of truth, right? Like before they order, right? So we can learn from understanding what we're learning from them and all their digital activation. We can understand when's the right time to text them, or, hey, how do we get on Waze, as especially our brand, as you're going home from work, you want to pick, something up on the way home. How do we message you in those moments that you are now traveling in, which before really digital age, it might have been radio, would have been your way to reach somebody as they're kind of in transit. Now there's so many more options. I would say another huge differentiation from a digital standpoint is just the way that brands are able to leverage, influencers these days to make sure your brand's so much more authentic. We are now no longer just a family and a commercial. We are real live people using our products and giving their own kind of spin to it. And that is a huge benefit for brands to seem real. And then finally, I would just say being able to meet them where they are, obviously a TikTok is a great example, everybody knows the Applebee's, example. And so that's a great example of how brands can now, become a part of their daily lives and the trends, and instead of just talking at people, through a commercial or a radio spot. But I couldn't be any more excited about what the digital world brings to brand marketing. It's so allows us to have a better relationship with our consumers.
Yeah, that's great. When you kind of think through all of that, and there's certainly a lot more opportunities, right, to reach or touch the consumer. What are some, what's either a digital innovation or some digital innovations or experiences that you have put into place that have really impacted your business in a really positive way?
Yeah, so we have a great digital team, and they have done a lot of work on, making sure that our marketing technology really brings to life what we want to bring to life, in person, in the store. But I think we've spent a lot of time on organizing data around understanding attitudinal things, understanding behavioral data, understanding that transactional data, understanding, how do we engage, how are consumers engaging with us in all these different digital places. And so all of that has led to working on a lot of segmentation data that our digital team is working on. And that is super exciting because that allows us to really personalize everything that we do for our consumers and how we communicate with them. And it certainly doesn't take the place of like the human, factor, but the personalizing something and having all that data behind it, ensures like we do not, it may seem from a digital standpoint maybe less personal, but at the same time, there's the expectation that that you don't miss a birthday from a digital standpoint. You should know when my birthday is, and you should be sending me, something on my birthday, or my order should be right. It's digital. I put it in there, and so, and just making sure that we're giving that same kind of level of experiential in the digital, like saying thank you, things like that. But I think overall, all of those are peripheral things to the original question. Is just being about organizing our data into a way that we can segment and that we can actually provide personalization in a meaningful way.
Well, I love it because you're clearly taking your passion for data and putting it into practice in such a meaningful, relevant way for your customers and consumers. I think that's really neat. I'm still not seeing any questions, so ask your questions, folks. So I'm going to continue on. We'll see what pops in there. Are there any particular emerging trends or things that you're seeing in this space that really excite you?
I mean, to me, and I've touched on a little bit, is just the personalization of where brands need to be with as it relates to consumers. So being able to, take the data that our digital team is gathering through all the interactions there and, combine that with even our own data that we get from research and really getting down to the personalization. And that is something that is trending across, not just QSR, but many, many places. And I think that was propelled into importance with COVID, as a lot of different needs came about in COVID, and the ability to meet those needs and deliver upon personalization became extremely important. And Papa Murphy's is so well positioned to deliver on personalization, not only from where we're going in our upgrading all of our digital channels and digital abilities to order, but just our product has always been about that. And you can always come to Papa Murphy's and personalize and customize, and that's what we've been about. So that is a trend that we are excited about.
Well, it's personalization is so deeply ingrained in your brand too, which is great. So it's just continuing that on, be able to leverage the data and do that in the digital space, which I think is so great.
Yeah.
We have a question. What advice would you give to the next generation of women marketers in the QSR space?
Gosh, I would, a little bit, I would probably give a little bit of a nod to, I think probably my advice would go to probably both men and women, overall. I think a few things come to mind when I think about that is, I would say, believe in yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Know the why behind maybe things that you want to suggest. And speak out about it confidently, because you would probably be surprised at how well your suggestions or your questions will come across, especially maybe even being a fresh face to either the brand or or the category overall. And I think sometimes we may tend to doubt ourselves if we're new or if we're younger in our career, but I have always been impressed by anyone who will, ask the questions and not be afraid to confidently speak or add suggestions. And then the other two things I think I would add to that is just what I've experienced in be able to move around into different companies or environments has really shaped me as a marketer, and being able to work within different structures or have different objectives, but also within that, I guess, brand marketing space has really enhanced my career, my skill set. So I would, I guess, encourage, to explore different opportunities throughout your career, and don't be afraid to do that, because it can really enhance your overall skill set and overall knowledge of marketing. But the last thing I would say is, if possible, and I know we don't always get this chance, but working on a product or in a category that you have a lot of passion for can make all the difference in the world. You spend a lot of time at work, and it's just, I've kind of worked in both, those that I've just kind of had a sort of a passion about, and those I really had a passion about. And it just makes a big difference into the ideas that you may bring to the table, or how you think about things, because your heart is truly, in it. So that's I know we can't always choose that, but if possible, that's a big one.
Yeah, I could not agree more. To your point, we
Mhm.
spend a lot of time doing it, and it's just a lot more fun. It's just so much more fun when you have true passion. I think Nita from Mod had said, like, somebody, had asked, like, why do you love? And she's like, I love fit. I do too. I love just going out there. And I have such an appreciation for seeing whether it's on the CPG side or the food service side, QSR, like, what's new? How are people reaching consumers differently? Kind of what are we seeing that's new, different, and exciting out there? I just think it's really exciting and a lot of fun. I know we only have like one more minute, so I just want to open up. Was there anyone in your career that was truly like influential on you, or somebody you can really point to, like either as a coach or a direct, somebody you worked directly for or with, that you were just like, wow, like when I really think on my career, they were super influential in helping me get where I am today, or really motivating me to kind of take a chance on something?
Yeah, I think the one thing I do feel very, I guess, thankful for is throughout my career, I've been given the opportunity to work with a lot of really great marketing leaders that have challenged me along the way. Um, I think that has been an extremely important part of my career, and it's probably the ones that were the hardest on me that were the most influential, and I still will pull upon those conversations that we had during those days, where it may have seemed to be a frustrating time, the expectations or the things, but those are the things that have made me the marketer that I am today. And I truly appreciate the challenges and the expectation that I was to come to the table with a point of view and an understanding, of where I stood on certain things. And so I have had one, I think at each place that I've worked, I've been had the advantage of having someone that really pushed me. And I think, maybe that is another piece that you could add to that last question about advice, is like, if you find those places where people will challenge you and look out for you.
I love that advice. That's great. Thank you. That's a great way to leave it. I love it. Thank you, Tracey.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm gonna second that, or third it. That was very meaty content. I really have to appreciate that, especially in a QSR kind of phrase. And thank you both so much for your time today. Katie Odell, I know that you're going to stay with us from Hathway+Bounteous, and Tracey Ayres. We learned so much about Papa Murphy's and best practices and how to support each other. And with that, I will thank you.